So unless employers start coming to their senses, unless we start to see real gains in our contracts that match the gains we've seen on Wall Street, then I predict there are going to be a lot more strikes on the horizon.
And Praz, Fain addressing some criticism he has faced about raising expectations maybe too high here in terms of his tactics and strategy. What did he say?
Yeah, in Q3, Cox Automotive said that the EV sales in the U.S. crossed 300,000 for the first time. It's a record for the U.S. in terms of EV sales. And
I think, Tesla, forest for the trees here is that this is the EV gorilla that makes money and will make money for a long time. And
so that said, we also promised we'd have some sort of real advertising, and we've seen some stabs at it, but really no real commitment to advertise.
All that and more. So let's get to it. Tesla stock ended down about 3% on Friday, settling around $251. For the week, down a little over 3%, over 8% for the month, over 9% for the 3-month. Year-to-date, still up 111%, and a little over 12% if we go back an entire calendar year. With the 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, and 3-month charts all being negative, it kind of makes me want to purchase some calls. But knowing what I know about the production and delivery numbers, I have a feeling that the margin number is going to be significantly lower than that of Q2.
Well, in other union news today, United Auto Workers President Shawn Fain has confirmed that the union will not expand its strike any further, but he did give this warning.
So unless employers start coming to their senses, unless we start to see real gains in our contracts that match the gains we've seen on Wall Street, then I predict there are going to be a lot more strikes on the horizon.
Let's bring in Pras Subramanian, who's been following this process. My first question is, what did his sweatshirt say today? He was wearing an Eat the Rich t-shirt last week. I couldn't quite make it out, though.
yeah, I actually struggled to understand what the acronym was on there. FIOM. I'm not sure.
After a quick Google search, my best guess would be he's in support of the Italian Federation of Metal Workers. But hey, who knows? I suppose we're going to be watching Shawn Fain's wardrobe, much like Taylor Swift's wardrobe at a Kansas City Chiefs game. Both things quite irrelevant.
I'm not sure, but anyway, yeah, Julie, so basically no strike expansion today, but warning that Fridays will no longer be the day that they sort of announce their strike plans. He says that the automakers are waiting. We're waiting until Friday to make their final offers, and sort of they don't want that. They want more urgency on the part of the big three. So they're saying, you know what, at any time we can stand up and strike like they did this Wednesday at Ford's Kentucky truck plant. So some news there in some sense from the UAW. Also, Fain called on all members to join the picket line on Saturday, to join existing picket lines to show support, because that marks 1 month since they've actually began these stand-up strikes with the big three. Like you said, like Fain said, if we don't start seeing any big gains, there might be a lot more strikes on the horizon.
I suppose you could call Shawn Fain's bluff, thinking that maybe they've exhausted the strike funds. I mean, some analysts have pegged that they could only do this for about 6 weeks, but that was before they started staggering out which plants would be striking. This is not some teenager on prom night randomly thrusting, hoping to achieve results. This is calculated, methodical, and dare I say primed for longevity. When he says more strikes are on the horizon, I believe him.
Also want to quickly add that Stellantis put out a statement today saying that, quote, "We have made progress this week and look forward to collaboration from the UAW to reach an agreement as soon as possible to get everyone back to work." So maybe some movement there with Stellantis.
And Praz, Fain addressing some criticism he has faced about raising expectations maybe too high here in terms of his tactics and strategy. What did he say?
Well, he initially said, "I'm not the cause of raised expectations. The cause is overflowing corporate bank accounts." I think this is more of a bigger picture potentially that we've noticed with, at least with today, maybe he feels some of the pressure from outside forces, maybe from even inside his union, talking about how, Unifor struck a deal, why can't we do this? Kind of the effects of this month-long strike are being felt across not just the workers, but also the industry. He mentioned this Ford story where Ford said that they had a media roundtable yesterday talking about how they had reached their limit in terms of what they could offer the UAW. And Fain today, in a kind of an aggressive tone, said, you know who's reached their limit? Tens of thousands of workers without retirement benefits.
Get 'em. Reach their limit. You're talking to the wrong people. They don't want to hear that bullshit. Reached your limit. Regardless of whether there's a pending deal looming, you're going to have a wary, distrusting labor force. You need to give these people a reason to want to work for you.
Next guest believes, quote, UAW President Shawn Fain may have fueled member expectations so high, coupled with the president joining the picket line, it may be more difficult to get something ratified. Mark Fields joins us today, former Ford CEO, CNBC contributor, and Qualcomm and Hertz board member. Mark, it's good to see you. A lot of interesting dynamics regarding not just the negotiations, but then Fain's own relations with members. How do you see things playing out regarding Ford specifically?
Well, listen, this is a major escalation, as is publicly known. This is Ford's biggest plant, and it's one of the biggest plants in the U.S. So it clearly is an escalation here, and I think the UAW's calculus is, hey, we're gonna hit one of the crown jewels, if you will, of the Ford business. But I also think, Carl, this might be, we might be nearer to the end game here, because at the end of the day, I think, the UAW hitting this plant for Ford, I think, would demonstrate to his rank and file that he is pressing as hard as he can. And I think, importantly, when you think about how the UAW is thinking about this strike action versus the automakers, Ford, GM, and Stellantis, I think in looking at the business, the UAW is playing, if you will, checkers, and the automakers are playing chess.
Go on.
And what I mean by that is the UAW is just thinking one contract, which is about 4 years. Because listen, they're elected officials. They have to get elected, another couple of years. So they have to show they're making ground. Whereas the automakers, they're thinking they're stewards of the business. So they have to think 5 to 10 years in advance in making sure that they're paying their employees fairly, but at the same time, not saddling the companies with an uncompetitive position versus the non-union imports or Tesla or some of the new startups.
I cannot argue with that logic. Except with all that forward thinking, maybe over the past couple of decades, you could have marched a few pawns down there and made them f***ing kings. Instead, you chose to sacrifice pawn after pawn after pawn. And now at this stage of the game, you have to transfer to an entirely new powertrain for your vehicles in order to survive the decade. And it looks like you're fresh out of pawns. Meanwhile,
starting to see more and more mainstream adoption when it comes to EVs. We actually just got new numbers out today, and it looks like demand actually picking up pretty quickly.
what? Does that say year over year? 50% growth? Imagine that.
Yeah, in Q3, Cox Automotive said that the EV sales in the U.S. crossed 300,000 for the first time. It's a record for the U.S. in terms of EV sales. And interestingly enough, Tesla sales still at 50%, but they've fallen down considerably from the low 60s in Q1. So we're seeing that the pie is expanding, more sales are happening. We're at around 8% total U.S. market share is EVs. There you can see the sort of the brands that have, other than Tesla, that are seeing their EV market share rise up here. But
pretty soon you'll be able to insert BYD, Li Auto, Xpeng, and for sure, Tesla's market share will go down. But two things can be true at the same time. Tesla will continue to sell the most battery electric vehicles while their EV market share continues to dwindle. But I'm gonna tell you like this, folks, who gives a shit? EVs make up less than 10% of new car vehicle sales. 8% is small potatoes, especially when that number is going to continue to grow exponentially. It is an extremely misleading metric. What you should be focused on is how much of the overall new car vehicle sales is Tesla gaining in that market share.
Sean, I got to mention something that, 8% is nice, but I think what really needs to happen is 10, 15, 20. And I think what's happening is we're seeing a sort of barrier hit with, at least in this country, because of the prices. That's sort of a big deal that we've seen with our Yahoo Finance Ipsos poll that came out this week, that cost is a major concern, and these cars are still above $50,000 on average. Once you start seeing the 40,000, maybe even 30,000 limit, might see some more adoption there. But I think that's sort of the critical limit is, can we get above 10 and then 15 at that?
Don't worry, Praz. I got you. Is this the Model 3 starting at $38,990 before incentives? Let me channel my inner Morty. Oh man, gee whiz, that's under $40,000. Model 3 not your speed and you're looking for something with a little more room? Oh man, gee whiz, the Model Y starting off at $43,990. I'm pretty sure that's below the average selling price of vehicles here in America. And that's before incentives. So I counter Praz that it will not be hard for us to extend past this 10%. In fact, it's going to happen much sooner than people think. The major catalyst will be the next generation platform. But I guess there's opportunity in that gap of ignorance.
There was news today that Tesla's share of the EV market was, I think, the lowest it's ever been. But I don't think that's surprising given the fact that everybody now has an EV. I mean, every manufacturer produces one, is my point. So the competition is more out there. Are you looking more at market share? Are you looking at margins? Some investors have been frustrated with these Tesla price cuts. They're trying to grab market share, but some investors like Gary Black are like, hey, you're probably leaving $1 billion in revenue on the table.
It's that level of short-sightedness that I'm talking about. It's not about the money. If motherfuckers can't afford the monthly payment, they're not going to buy the cars. In order for Tesla to solve for autonomy and lower the cost of batteries, they need to be producing them at the highest volume possible. They need to be acquiring the most miles on autonomous software as possible. You can't do that while your cars collect dust while piling up in inventory. Who gives a shit how much money that they could have made when there is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity hovering around the solving of autonomy? I love me some Gary Black, and his insights are invaluable, but he is dead wrong in this situation.
Well, I think it speaks to their position of strength and the fact that they've been at this for 15 years and just what a lead that is compared to, all the startups that are trying to, make money from EVs, and of course the big three, and dealing with their strike and how that's going to increase their costs. So I think, Tesla, forest for the trees here is that this is the EV gorilla that makes money and will make money for a long time. And so we can fret and the bears can, say that the gross margins are going down or something. But think about this stock. This has taken so much bad news this year. There have been supposed delivery misses. Gross margins have been lower than they have been for a long time. And the bad economy hanging over everybody and the rising rates. And yet this stock is up 107% for the year.
The motherfucking right. The stock is taking a Cybertruck level approach, being bulletproof in the market. Honestly, I can't believe we're still over 100% gains for the year. Cybertruck delay, retooling of the factories, dropping prices, lawsuits and investigations. Yeah, the news has not been kind, but we're still here. We're still strong.
Time now for our daily dose of Tesla. They report their numbers on Wednesday, but ahead of that, listen to this. We know that Tesla is the undisputed king of EVs. But a new report shows that the size of the crown might be shrinking a bit. Tesla owned half of the U.S. EV market in the third quarter, but that is down 12% from the beginning of the year. Still, its closest competitor, Ford, is about 1 million miles away with just about 7%. Now, Tesla CEO Elon Musk has been a controversial figure the last few years, even more so since he bought X, formerly known as Twitter. So could that actually be a reason that their little corner of the pie, the auto pie, is shrinking, or is it really just competition? Ross, I got to tell you, about pretty much everybody in my town owns at least one Tesla, I feel like. And I've had people literally say, I love Tesla. I'm not going to buy one or another one because of Elon Musk. I'm sure you've heard the same thing. Do you think this is a slight reason they've had to cut cost?
One, those people are morons. I don't know Jeff Bezos from the next bald motherfucker down the street, but I'm not giving up Amazon Prime. I don't care what headlines show up. The same is true for that guy back there. I've never met Elon, and I don't intend to, but I'll be damned if I give up my Tesla. But let me be frank, once those idiots go over to buy their Ford Mach-E, their Mercedes, whatever EV that they decide, Rivian, because I don't like the CEO. I'd rather have a less performative, less safe vehicle for me and my family, just to spite the CEO. Those individuals will be coming back to the best product. or unnecessarily suffer the ramifications of not being a part of the ecosystem. Now, for those of you that haven't experienced a Tesla, I understand this is hard to fathom, but these automobiles cost too much to get second best. It's not like buying the Walmart brand Fruity Pebbles, folks. Sure, it tastes a little different, but you'll survive. No, this is an entirely different scenario because of the ecosystem that Tesla provides. The over-the-air software updates that are constantly improving your car, the charging station situation, and let's not forget about full self-driving. I shouldn't be too hard on these individuals because regardless of whether or not their next vehicle is a Tesla, they will be coming back eventually, and we will welcome them back to the Tesla family with open arms.
Well, I mean, honestly, I've heard a lot worse than that. People actually despise him. Yeah, unfortunately, and in its core market like California, where Tesla sells a ton of cars, I don't think Elon's doing anything to help sell cars. So that said, we also promised we'd have some sort of real advertising, and we've seen some stabs at it, but really no real commitment to advertise. And this is definitely hurting Tesla. In my parking lot, for example, in my office, my two partners, one of them owns a Rivian now, and one of them owns the new BMW i7. It parks next to my Plaid, and it used to be all Teslas. So I think we're seeing that across the board. But just the same, Tesla's still 50% of a market that's growing by 50%. So this isn't so bad.
Yeah, it is. Listen, they didn't have to advertise forever because guys like you who would buy a Tesla would be like, my God, you got to drive my car, or check this out. It's unbelievable. It rides, whatever. Sort of word of mouth to friends. Now there's competition, right? Now there's actual real competition in the market. Why don't they advertise?
Obviously, Ross is in the camp of advertisement, so let me go ahead and give you the practical answer. They don't advertise because they don't make enough cars in order to really benefit from advertisement dollars. It's a waste of money. If you're only going to make 2 million cars this year, half of which may go to the United States, you put an ad out on Monday Night Football advertising Teslas, getting it into people's brains, that's one thing. You'll probably drum up website traffic for sure. But if you've been following the consumer consensus data, they have the highest website traffic on the planet. What more do you want? Those that can afford the vehicle will do their due diligence. Those motherfuckers that had Teslas and no longer want Teslas, that's on them. They are what we call outliers. The vast majority of people that buy these vehicles will fall in love with them and never leave the company. Those statistics are also on record. I strongly believe they will not need to advertise until the next-gen platform. Once the total addressable market is expanded by the next-gen vehicle, advertising will be a must after they hit a decent level of production. But Ross, let us know why Tesla desperately needs to advertise.
Well, that's a great question because actually, I don't actually think the competition is that bad for Tesla from the EV side. What I think it is that early adopters of EV technology all have EVs now or Teslas. So really you have to expand the market for EVs. And we're seeing that market expand rapidly, but we're still talking out really small. It's like 7 or 8% of the overall car market. But if you actually ask somebody why they don't own an EV or a Tesla, the answers are absurd. There's there's a big lack of understanding and education and a ton of misinformation that's put out about how great it is to own an EV and how superior they are as an automobile. But Tesla needs to get that messaging out to consumers that don't really know much about EVs. And that's, I think, what's hurting them.
Now, I agree with all of what Ross says there, but I don't think it's time. Not until the next-gen vehicle ramps up to any meaningful, significant production. In conclusion, the UAW has switched up their strike tactics. EV sales are up 50% year over year. Tesla's dominance is well documented, yet highly doubted for some reason. And Tesla needs to have a strong ad campaign to get people out in droves to buy vehicles that are highest selling in the world? Sure, I guess. Production is not quite there yet. And that's all I have for you today. Be easy. Peace.